Hi and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Steve Forbes and we're talking to Auckland Mayor Phil Goff today about his 2019 election campaign. He's seeking a second term in office and we're just going to talk to him about the campaign and some of the issues Auckland's facing. So how's the campaign going, Phil?
It's always interesting, always busy. Yeah, it's pretty much 24/7. You've got your normal business as usual, and on top of that, you've got your candidates' debates. So I think I did 10 meetings between Friday night and Sunday night, and the day started today at 5 o'clock, and I'll 5 in the morning. I'll be home probably by about 10 o'clock, 10:30 tonight. So gives you a flavour. Yeah, another debate tonight, and it's New Zealand Fashion Week, so got to be there to help launch that. That is a great event for the city. Whether the debate's great or not, I'll leave it up to the audience.
Okay, so after 3 years in office, what would you say is your greatest achievement as mayor?
I think getting the investment in infrastructure that this city really needs. Let's just take transport for an example. In the Auckland Transport Alignment Project, I got a 50% increase in the capital funding, and the government's put 18, now 19 billion extra into Auckland's transport network. I think I pushed the government about as far as they had the flexibility to go. I would like them to have gone further, but that will make a real difference. And likewise, for council itself, in our long-term plan, we passed our 10-year budget last year, $26 billion worth of council investment in infrastructure. That's a huge boost on what went before it. So we can do more in terms of infrastructure for housing, more for transport, more for protecting and enhancing our environment. So, I'd put that at the top of the list of things that I'm proud of achieving.
So with the Auckland Transport Alignment Project, which you announced in April last year, obviously, like you said, there was $28 billion in infrastructure funding, well, transport funding over the next 10 years. And that's obviously going into rail, roading, and a lot of much needed projects. But do you have concerns about the NZTA and the government's ability to meet its commitments to ATAP?
I had cause for concern. When we announced it on the basis of advice from NZTE, Ministry of Transport and Auckland Transport, and the Minister and I both committed ourselves to that budget. Subsequently, there was talk, our Land Transport Fund is oversubscribed, and I said, to hell with your Land Transport Fund being oversubscribed. I have from you a watertight commitment that you will fund this project, and you will fund it, and they will.
Yeah. Okay.
But it wasn't without some challenge to the fact, look, I understand central government pretty well, and I know that they're under some funding pressure. Everybody wants more of everything. But when you make that commitment and you give advice to your minister and to me as mayor, then you honour the promise that you undertook. And that's what I expected of them, and that is what they are now delivering.
So now after 3 years in local government, have you found it a challenge?
Yeah, look, in many ways, people say, how do you find it after central government? And, at times at central government, I had a really hard, high commitment portfolio workload. I was Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade at the same time as I was Minister of Justice, and I look back on that and I thought, how the hell did I manage, the biggest domestic portfolio plus a foreign affairs portfolio? But I've got to tell you, I think doing that was easier than the sort of commitment that I have as mayor, because you're covering the whole of the whole scope of policy. You're working with a council which is of the governing body, 21 individuals. I'm one vote out of 21. I don't have a caucus or a form of discipline to require somebody to vote in favour of the proposals I put forward. So every exercise of authority is one where you work through persuasion. And what I'm really proud of is actually our three budgets that we've had, including the 10-year budget, went through with overwhelming support. And, eat your heart out, Grant Robertson. I think if he got 75% support for his budget across the House, he'd be pretty satisfied.
Okay, and so what are your big plans going forward over the next 3 years if you win a second term in office? What are your biggest plans moving forward?
Well, I think it's building on the foundation that we've laid. You don't change everything in 3 years. It takes longer than that. And the frustrating thing about investment in infrastructure is there is that time lag. So I was in Cabinet when we made the decision to do the Waterview Tunnel. 10 years later, as mayor, I was at the opening of the Waterview Tunnel. And likewise with a lot of those infrastructure projects. But it is to deal with that growing problem. Look, we're increasing our population by 40,000 people a year. So we add a city the size of Tauranga every 3 years to Auckland. I've lived here all my life. I can not remember a time when we were growing this fast. And I welcome the growth. I've talked to mayors of other cities. They say, we're losing our young people, we're losing our jobs, things are going backwards. And I think growth is a great challenge to have. But we've got to meet that growth. We've got to turn that growth into a real asset that makes Auckland New Zealand's international city and globally competitive city. If we are not the globally competitive city in New Zealand doesn't have one. So it's making sure that we can get that transport infrastructure up. I want to see the City Rail link completed and on time. It's going to have a massive impact. And John Tamahiri's talking about not completing it now. That's kind of bizarre when you think about it. I want to see light rail commenced, and I'm concerned that the government has taken as long as it has over that, particularly on those areas where we're already facing bus congestion. I want to see the new busways further up north to Albany and then on to Ariwa. We've started the Eastern Busway just in the last 6 months, and that will take us from Panmure to Pakuranga to Botany, and then it'll swing around and go through East Tamaki, Manukau, Puanui and to the airport precinct. I want to see the cycleways and the walkways that we've got planned, 52 kilometres more of them, put in place so that people that have that as an option can have a healthy and a safe way of travelling around, walking or travelling by bike. I want to see the water clean-up that we've got in our harbour. They said when I became Mayor, they said it'll take 30 years, Mayor, to stop the wastewater flowing into the harbour. And I said, to hell with that. This is a birthright for Aucklanders, to have beaches clean to swim in. I want my kids, my grandkids, to be able to do that. And we will now do it in 10 years, not 30 years. And I want to see the environment protected. We've got our million trees planted. Actually, it'll be about 1.1, 1.2 million. And we want to increase that again over the next term. Carbon sinks, stopping siltation, new habitat for birds, greening and making our city a more beautiful place. So, those are some of my ambitions. And I have to add a fourth that's pretty prosaic, but it is actually finding the efficiencies to ensure that the money that we get as revenue is used to the best possible effect. And I have hardwired into our 10-year budget $1 billion worth of savings through value for money exercises and efficiency exercises. Things like, instead of having 6 different CCOs and the governing body separately procuring major contracts, to do it as a group where you can shave literally hundreds of millions of dollars off that. Working out how you can save money through better use of your utilities, power and water. We saved $5.3 million last year, right down to the little things like, I don't need a chauffeur, 2 chauffeurs actually, all previous mayors have had, and a big car. I can drive myself around in a small electric car. We've halved the expenditure on international travel by council, because that's not a priority for me. We are a local government. Yes, we can sometimes learn by attending overseas conferences, but we've got to really work carefully with the ratepayers' money, and we're achieving that, and we'll do more of that.
So you mentioned you've got some concerns with the Auckland Light Rail project. I mean, obviously, we know that the New Zealand Super Fund with the group
Canadians
from Quebec have put forward their proposal. I mean, that was in May last year. I mean, Phil Twyford's announcement last week didn't really say much.
It says they'll have a decision by January.
But aside from that, I mean, we knew that the New Zealand Super Fund had put forward a proposal, and he said the other partner they were looking at using was the NZTA. Well, and the NZTA was expected to be funding the project at some level.
Yeah. Well, look, on one hand, I do understand what the government's trying to do. They say, we're going to put some billions of dollars into this. We want to get it right. We want to make sure we can do it in the most effective and the most cost-effective way. But I'm also feeling somewhat frustrated about it. Look, I know in Mount Roskill we're going to put another 12,000 homes we're going to build in that area. In Mangere, another 10,000 homes. In Onehunga, perhaps another 3,000 or 4,000 homes. And you cannot get more cars on the road. And worse than that, you can't get more buses on the road than are currently using those routes. So we have to have a more effective and efficient, a quicker and a higher capacity way of getting around. And everywhere I've looked in the world, the principal answer is to have light rail. If you can't run it underground like London and New York and Washington, then you put it overground and you put it down existing roads. So we need to get on and do that. Yep. Look, the government is paying for this, so he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Or maybe the New Zealand Super Fund.
Yeah. Well, I'm invested in that as well, I suppose, like you are. But look, I'd like to see them get on and do that. Yes, I know they have to do it thoroughly. They've got to get it right, but we also need it in place, and we need to start it as soon as possible so we can get it completed as soon as possible.
I mean, do you have concerns about the 2021 APEC conference, any effect that could have on it?
No. Look, I think we'll be fine for that. We're starting in about 2 weeks' time the Puanui rail bus transfer station, so you'll be able to get heavy rail to Puanui and then a congestion-free bus lane through to the airport. And it's not just for the airport; it's actually the precinct. We've got 30,000 people working there now. That's going to treble to 90,000 in the next 20 years. We'll handle APEC fine. There'll be no doubt the convoys for the world leaders down the motorway. That'll be a bit disruptive. Be disruptive in the weekend when we have the leaders gathering in the centre of town. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll probably some enterprises will close for the Friday. That will free up the space.
But you don't think it'll have any impact on the light rail project?
No. Light rail. Because it's starting next year, you're not going to start at the city end of it. You're not going to dig up Queen Street for light rail when you've got the America's Cup, APEC, the Women's World Cup, etc. Yeah, so they'll start at the southern end. I imagine they might start around Mount Roskill or Onehunga.
Okay, that said, Phil Twyford did say that work wouldn't be starting until 2021.
Yeah. So that work won't affect the centre of town. The work that we're doing in the centre of town now will be completed by the time APEC takes place. I mean, APEC, the America's Cup, why are they important? Well, both of them will be exciting events, particularly the America's Cup for most New Zealanders. But that's when you showcase your city. That's when the eyes of the world are on you and you want to do it well. And we will do it well. America's Cup will be the best ever America's Cup. The yacht races will be in the inner harbour. People will be able to see it from the shore, from Victoria and from North Head, Takapuna Beach, from Bastion Point. That will be fantastic, and APEC we will run professionally as you would expect us to run.
So this project, I was going to say, like, you've obviously got a self-imposed debt to revenue limit of 265%. Now, obviously you have stuck to that, and I know Moody's, I've read Moody's report, and you obviously have stuck to the limit you set yourself. But do you have concerns that another one of these public projects could blow the debt limit? Or in this case, are you saying that the Auckland Light Rail project, the council's input or AT's input, will be limited?
Yeah, the government has agreed to fund light rail, and I'm very pleased about that because it is a project that will have some financial risk. But what we're doing with our alliance model of contracting now, and we're doing it for the America's Cup, which is on time and on budget, if not a little under budget, that's working well. You give your contractors some real incentives that when you're under budget, they get some money back. When it's over budget, they share in the costs of that. And we're doing this, the City Rail Link, the C3 and C7 contracts in exactly the same way. It's a model that works. We share the risk and we share the benefits and we share the costs. So each party is incentivised to get on, to do their part in it and to make sure that it's delivered in a timely and cost-effective way.
So AT won't be funding the light rail project at all?
No,
will be
no. We've got it's included. Some of it's included in the Auckland Transport Alignment project in the early stages of the planning and design and acquisition. But the principal funding of that will be done by government, either through the New Zealand Transport Agency or through the PPP with the Super Fund and the Canadians.
Yep. Well, obviously that Montreal project that CDPQ have done, I was reading about that last week, it's quite interesting. They're obviously very experienced in these major projects. So.
Yeah, and it's certainly worth looking at them and what they can deliver. I mean, PPPs do keep the initial capital cost off the council's books, off the central government's books, but it's like hire purchase. You can afford it now, but you pay for it for much longer. Yeah. So it's not a magic fix, and I think the interest that we have is what will be the OPEX that we have to meet in order to fund that light rail. Yep, great if we don't have to have it on our books, great if the government doesn't have to have it on its books, great if we can use private capital, but you will be paying for it, and you will be paying for it a bit more. And when I say you, I mean we, the taxpayer, the ratepayer and the commuter will all be contributing to the higher costs that might be involved with a PPP.
So you do have concerns about that?
Well, they are obvious. I'm stating problems that are inherent with that model. That's not to say I'm against the model. If that's the way you can bring the infrastructure forward and get it done, that's I couldn't afford a house if I was paying cash for it, but if I pay it off over time on a mortgage, I can. Does that mean that I'm paying a whole lot more for my mortgage? Of course it does. But would I be better off by not having the mortgage and not having the house? No, I wouldn't.
So you're not paying for it, so at the end of the day, if the New Zealand Super Fund's willing to...
Well, they will have to, I don't think it's a big risk for them unless they get something terribly wrong in the planning. But we've got mixed feelings about that. We want the super fund to do well because that'll be paying our super for us in years to come. But we don't want them to put the price up to other than a reasonable level for the money that they invest in delivering this infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Good as gold. Thank you very much.